Hi everybody, it's Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and we are now starting our Facebook Live in our Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. This is part of a 5-day event that we are doing in our Facebook group, and this is day 4 of our spiritual empowerment activation for empaths and sensitives. So if you are an empath or you consider yourself to be spiritually sensitive, there's a lot of information in today's class and in the entire series. So welcome back. And also, even if you haven't watched the other classes yet, it's okay. You can just jump right in and join us for this class. You can always go back and watch the other classes right after this one. It's totally fine. There's no rules here. As we're waiting for people to join, I just want to give a shout out to those of you who are watching the replay, because you're the ones that are seeing the very, very beginning. So hello to you. Shout out to those of you who are on my YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. And just a clarity that this is a Facebook Live. So there, of course, with a Facebook Live, there's a lot of bantering and chit-chatting. And also, there's always really good, valuable content interwoven in. So let's get started. Today's topic, since this whole series is about empaths, today's topic is one that I'm really excited about because I actually have never taught this exact content, this exact lesson to you guys. I've taught a lot of other things about empaths over the years, but today we're going to talk about empath trip-ups, things that can trip you up, challenges that are beyond just the obvious challenges. And I'm not even going to give you hints about what it is, but I guarantee you're going to learn some new things, and so I'm excited to share this with you guys. I've been exploring this a lot in my own life, behind the scenes, understanding relationships with others, and so I'm really excited to share it with you guys. Hi everybody, good to see you. As you are coming in and joining us, I'd like for you to share 2 things: where you're joining from and one thing that you've learned so far, one aha moment. Okay, so where you are joining from and one aha moment. Go ahead and share it, and I will read off your comments in just a little bit. So because this is a Facebook Live, and the nature of a Facebook Live is that we're waiting for people to join before we get into the real deep stuff, I'm going to go ahead and make announcements now. And the first thing I'm going to talk about are the free gifts. So every day of this Facebook challenge, I'm giving away free gifts. That's really, really fun. I love that part of doing Facebook challenges. So every day we have different gifts. So I need to look at my notes to see what the heck the gifts are today. I was very creative as I created these lessons for each day, and I wanted to mix up, I wanted to be creative about which gifts we would have on which day, so they weren't boring gifts or just the same thing each day. So as I came up with this list of gifts each day, I was like super excited about it. So today's gift, okay, so there's 2 aspects that I've been doing. Anybody who stays till the end of this Facebook Live has a chance of getting a gift, and that gift today is going to be a card pull. I will do a mini oracle card message for you. I'll pick one card and give you like really brief messages, like a mini psychic reading, just to give you a little tip or some words of wisdom. The other gift is connected with your daily homework, which should automatically post at the bottom of the hour. I've got it scheduled that it should show up in the feed in our Facebook group. And anyone who participates in today's homework and comments on the homework thread, I'm going to pick three participants from the homework thread, and you will get my chakra balancing audio meditation, and Actually, I had one of my new students in Spiritual Empowerment Academy messaged me last night or this morning, and she has access to that because my students in the academy have access to like this humongo library of like really cool stuff, and you guys are getting little samples of it through these free gifts. Anyway, she had listened to the guided meditation, this particular one, the chakra balancing guided meditation, and she was like, oh my God, I felt so much better. I think I'm going to listen to this every single day. And I said, that's great. You can listen to it every single day. Go for it. And also in the academy, there's way more guided meditations than that. There's a huge library. It's so awesome. Anyway, I'm going to pick 3 people. I'm going to do a drawing and pick 3 people to win that gift of the chakra balancing guided meditation. Yesterday, one of our winners happened to already be a student in Spiritual Empowerment Academy, and it would kind of stink to win a gift that you already have. So for her, yesterday, I gave her a free 15-minute session, which we're working on scheduling. So if you're already in the academy, you still can win. So I'll give you a good gift as well. So those are the free gifts. And then also just a reminder that anybody who applies to Spiritual Empowerment Academy this week, you've got to do it while the Facebook challenge is going on. Tomorrow is the last day of the challenge, and so I'm going to give you till midnight. Let's say I need to give a time zone. Midnight Pacific. I'm in Pacific time zone, so we're going to say you have to submit your application by midnight Thursday Pacific time zone, in order to be qualified for the free gift. So if you apply and you qualify, because you have to go through an application with me, and a lot of people who apply do get in, but not everybody does, because it needs to be a good match mutually. Of course, that's logical, right? I mean, you'd want it to be a good fit for you too. So, if you go through that process and you join, then the first, actually 5 people who join get a free 15-minute session with me. 2 of those spots have been taken, and so now there's 3 applicant spots left. I think I announced yesterday that the general public can't schedule one-on-one sessions with me anymore. I actually removed that option back several months ago, so being able to get a 15-minute session with me is really awesome, and we get a lot done. I'm very efficient with your time. We can work on a lot of things during that 15-minute session. So that's it for gifts. I've got a couple more tiny announcements. But before I go into those, just a reminder that as we're checking in, all of you who are here live, we've got a decent-sized group already. Go ahead and let us know where you're joining from, and one thing that you've learned so far, or one aha moment, and I will read your comments in just a moment. Okay, so where do you find out about working with me, all the different ways that you can work with me, one of which is the online academy, Spiritual Empowerment Academy. You can go to my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Under the events tab, you will see Spiritual Empowerment Academy. Click on that, and you can read about it and just listen to your inner guidance. What I really hope for is that that you'll always follow your inner guidance and join a program or apply for a program if it feels like it is the right fit, if you feel guided to. And if you don't feel guided to, then that's okay too. Listen to that. So listen to your inner guidance. And either way, my hope for you is that you will enjoy this free 5-day challenge that's given freely. It's my way of paying it forward to the universe. My other announcement is that those of you who are on Facebook, you might not know about my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. That's where I upload all my free free classes, and there's so many hours of free content on there so that everybody, no matter what your financial situation is, has something that they can work with. Now, that said, I do charge for services. I do charge for my paid program. That's actually my life's work. That's how I pay my rent for my tiny little place that I live in. So if you are wanting to go deeper than just the free, like the basics, we cover tons of content that's free, like huge amount, but we don't go super deep into like how to solve your problem. That all of the like how to nuts and bolts, that's all in my paid program. So I do it that way on purpose so that you can at least get started with the free stuff, but I don't give it all away because I gotta eat and pay rent just like you. So that's about that. And then also the final announcement is, if you are on a tight budget or not, either way, if you want to understand about energy and how the spirit world works, about psychic attack, paranormal stuff, how and why that kind of stuff even happens, if you want to understand your psychic skills and how to utilize them, and also have some basic skills to get you started in managing and protecting your energy, as well as even beginning to clear out some psychic attack issues, then you can get my book, Darkness Disguised as Light. It's under $20 on Amazon, Kindle, and paperback. So if you're on a super tight budget and you've gone through all the free content, all the videos, and you need a little bit more, that does give you some techniques. But if you want to go deeper into the techniques, that's Spiritual Empowerment Academy. Okay? All right, so today's topic is really, I think it's super interesting. It's all about the common empath trip-ups. Some of them you may or may not be aware of, but I'm going to go deeper than you may have understood previously. So grab your pen and paper, and I'm going to now read your comments. Okay, where are we? We've got a lot of people. Hi, Barbara. Yay. Stephanie says hello. Christy says hello. Stephanie, joining from Vancouver, Washington, and I have learned more examples of what personal boundaries look like. Yeah, and if anybody missed yesterday's class, it was a really awesome class all about the challenges that empaths have with setting and receiving boundaries. And so if you missed that, go back and watch it. Barbara is joining from Smithville, Missouri. I learned there are actually names to what I feel. And I don't know about you, Barbara, but I find that it's really validating to know that there's a name for it. Because when we don't realize there's a name for it and we're having this kind of strange, or what seems like a strange experience, it kind of makes us feel like we wonder if maybe we're crazy or something. But when we find out that other people are going through it and that there's a name for it, then we're like, oh, okay, this actually is a thing. And it's really helpful. Hey, Joe, I just saw your message, and I will reply to it, or I saw the first part of it. I'll reply to it in a little bit. I got a couple messages from some of you that I will respond to shortly. Joe is joining from Mazatlan, Mexico, currently. Learned all the different kinds of clairs, which we talked about on the second day of our challenge, all the different psychic skill sets. She learned about all the different clairs that I am. I saw a muscle testing variation that I need to know more about, and learned all the different kinds of empath I am, all stuff I didn't know and am psyched to have learned. Yes, I love it. That makes me excited. Christy says, I'm outing myself. It's amazing. I love it. Lourdes says, hi all. Hi, Lourdes. Big hugs. Angela Wilson, Kansas City, Missouri. Aha moment is with the intuitive skill set. I did not realize I had clairvoyance and the psychic smell sense. I have been trying to figure that out for 30 years. I'm really glad that we were able to help you with that, Angela. That's awesome. Zahira. I crack myself up sometimes. Zahira is joining from Seattle, Washington. Actually, Seattle would be kind of a cool woman's name, wouldn't it? Lourdes from Lawrence, Kansas. I don't have any good and or defined boundaries. Okay, yeah. So like that excites me actually, because when I discover something like that about myself, I go, ooh, that's missing. And then I want to start working on it. Like, I got to figure this out. Okay, I don't have any good and or defined boundaries. Now I'm going to work on that. I'm going to create that. I'm going to think about it, ponder it, brainstorm in my journal, talk to my friend, etc. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. And I took a quick little break right before class, went and sat out in the sun, and it's really hot already here. So I'm going to keep drinking water because I'm thirsty now. Okay, and hot. Sahela says, aha moment was that I sometimes don't take other people. The aha moment was that I sometimes don't take other people setting boundaries with me as well as I could. So you have difficulty with receiving boundaries sometimes. Rochelle, hello. Sahela says, excuse me, I'm excited about all my clairs, all your different psychic skill sets. Rochelle is joining us from Wisconsin. Wonderful. Okay, I think we're on track. We're kind of scooting along a little faster today now that we've got our groove. And we didn't have any internet issues today, thank goodness. Oh my goodness, yesterday was crazy. Okay, so today's topic, we're going to talk about the trip-ups that empaths commonly have. Hi Barbara, good to see you. So number one, trip-up. We all know that empaths have a problem with absorbing, or a lot of empaths have a problem with absorbing energies from others. So, and by the way, as I go through these different empath trip-ups, you might relate to some of them, but not others, because we're not all the same, we're all unique. And you may have already healed some of these. If you had the issue before, it might not be an issue anymore. But most of the time, when we think of like the empath thing being kind of a curse instead of a gift, like, oh, it's just so hard, it's this like burden, that's because we're having issues with picking up on or absorbing too much stuff from other people, other environments, etc. And it's overwhelming, and we end up like getting confused about our feelings, and we have trouble discerning between what's your energy and what's other energy, right? And we actually went into that on day 2. This is day 4. On day 2, we worked on discernment and being able to tell the difference between what's your energy and what is not. And going over that class again will help you with this first trip up. And also our class tomorrow, where I'm going to take you through a guided journey for grounding and anchoring and protecting and strengthening and empowering your energy. That will also help with this issue of being overly absorbent. So both of those classes will help with that. Some of these other trip ups that I'm going to go through, there's not necessarily a quick solution to these, but I think that like just awareness Like having an awareness and an understanding of these issues is like the most important thing. So once you know about some of these other trip ups, then you can start to do your own research, maybe do a deep dive into YouTube to learn about some of these things. There's a lot of free YouTube videos out there about some of the things I'm going to talk about. And so just awareness and learning about it can help you. Also, some of these trip ups that we're going to talk about might require some deeper healing, like working with a therapist and working on some of your patterns in relationships, which is beyond what we're doing here. Also, that reminds me, before going any further, I know you all know this, but you also know I always feel like I need to give a disclaimer like this, that I am not a therapist and I'm not a doctor. I am going to be using some maybe therapy kinds of terms in today's class, but I am not a therapist, and I'm in no way qualified to diagnose you. So please don't message me and ask if I think that you're a whatever, because I can't do that. That would be unethical, and I don't have the qualification to diagnose someone. So if you are concerned about something, and you have questions, then I would suggest that you refer to your doctor, your medical professional, etc., for those kinds of questions. And you'll understand more as I get into some of the other trip ups. So we all know now I'm not a therapist, and also just a reminder that as you learn about some of these things, it's also not a good idea for you to go around diagnosing everyone in your world. Like, that person is a blah, blah, narcissist, whatever. Like, at the least, you could maybe say that they perhaps have some narcissistic tendencies, but you can't. Just remember to be humble. Unless you are a therapist or a doctor, you can't diagnose people. Okay, so we got that disclaimer down. Okay, good to see everybody. We have more people who've joined. Great. Okay, so we already talked about trip up number 1, empath trip up number 1. That's the one that everybody knows about and talks about. Number 2 trip up is called mirroring. Mirroring. And that's hard to say. That is when you might absorb someone else's stuff. So the first part of mirroring is that you absorb other people's feelings or tendencies or behaviors, and then you project it back to them. So you start acting like they do. You start expressing whatever emotions they are feeling. Okay, so you start to act like they do. I didn't know anything about this until maybe 7 years ago. I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was. And I'm going to be kind of vague here. I had someone in my world that I had to be connected with in my personal life. And in my observation, I think she was very high drama. She would freak out over things and then dramatize, oh my God, it's blah, 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 blah. And then she would just have a complete fit over things and just over the top response. And I didn't understand what was happening at first, but the more I was around her, and again, this was not a personal friend. This was someone that was in my world, in my personal world, and that, I couldn't just not have them there. It's complicated. But anyway, so what I started to notice over time was that when I would be with her, I would start to act high drama, oh my God, this person is clearly ripping me off, and blah, blah, this and that are happening. I would just go into this high drama mode. And she would get really annoyed with me. I mean, I could tell that she was like, what the hell? But that happened a couple of times. It didn't happen a lot because after a while I ended up completely disengaging because there were some really unhealthy behaviors from her. So I had to completely cut things off. But this mirror thing, it happened a couple times in a couple of interactions. And at first, all I noticed was that I was acting a little bit out of character. And I was like, what's that about? And then I also noticed that she seemed to be really annoyed with me. And it wasn't until after those couple of instances, and both of them were pretty minor. It wasn't like complete meltdown or anything like that. But after it happened a couple times, that's when I had the aha moment and I realized, oh, like I'm starting to mirror her behavior because she did that a lot, like all the time. Total drama, and everyone was out to get her all the time, and even people who who were like totally on her side. And so that was my first experience with mirroring. Apparently I didn't need to have too much experience with it because I had that really small, minor couple of small scenarios with it. And then after that I was like, oh, that was weird. And so now that I'm aware of it, I don't do it anymore. Or I catch myself and I know what's starting to happen, so I don't get pulled into that energy. Go ahead and give me some hearts and some thumbs up if you think you have ever done the mirroring thing. Whether it's a personal friend, someone that you're dating, somebody at work, a family relationship, somebody that you're like, wow, I kind of act out of character. I start to act like them. It either in a positive or negative way. Usually, I think with empaths, it's usually a negative behavior that you start to mirror. So I see some hearts coming up. Yeah. So give us some hearts, give us some thumbs ups or some comments. Let's get things going a little bit. Joe says, yeah, for sure. Christy, absolutely, with a very dear friend that I love. Yeah, and it can be with people that you still love and care about. In my situation, it was someone who ended up having, I think, like a real major emotional meltdown, and that I felt was unsafe for me to be around. So it ended up being a really extreme situation, and I was like having to get police involved so that I could move out of that situation. But sometimes it's people that we're currently involved with, people that we love, people that we care about, and when we're with them, we just start to take on who they are. And sometimes we might even, like if it's in a romantic relationship, we might even tend to lose ourselves a bit. Yeah. So Christy says, absolutely, with a dear friend. Zahira giving a thumbs up. Tony says, yes, quite a lot. They don't like it at all. Yeah, if we're mirroring behaviors that are kind of high drama or not really positive behaviors, and we're mirroring back to them what they usually do, yeah, they don't like that at all. And oftentimes they're not even aware of their own negative behaviors. So when someone else is doing it to them, it's really triggering because it's unhealed shadow within them. Yep. Rochelle says, I've done it many times. I usually pick up on high energy, bubbly people. Oh, that's a good example. Thank you for sharing that. Zahira says, yes, with my mother, and we didn't get along well at that time. I figured that out in time to change it, and then we were best friends, mother and daughter. Oh, I'm so glad. Stephanie says, yes, in romantic relationships in the past, they would yell at me, and so I yelled back because the conversations were not grounded. Yeah, so you took on their behaviors. Okay, let's move on to trip up number 3. A lot of empaths are people pleasers. So empath trip up number 3 is being a people pleaser. People pleaser syndrome, doormat syndrome, walking on eggshells. And there's, in my opinion, again, I'm not a therapist, but I'm an empath, have been for my whole life, and I've made a lot of observations over the years that I think that the reason why empaths have a tendency to be people pleasers is for one of 2 reasons or both. The first is that we're feeling other people's stuff. So if they're not happy, if we pick up even a little bit that they're not happy with us, or they're just unhappy about just in a bad mood or something, we can feel it, and then we want to fix that energy. Like, it feels uncomfortable for us to feel that they're not happy, or they're not happy with us. That feels uncomfortable, and so we want to like smooth that over, because we don't like feeling that the person isn't happy. So that's one of the reasons why empaths can tend to be people pleasers. And the second reason can be because of past traumas. So growing up as a kid, if there was a lot of abuse and or trauma, then you could end up being somebody who walks on eggshells and tries to people please. Maybe you took on that role in order to keep yourself and or your siblings safe and to keep you from harm, physical or emotional harm. And so you learned not only how to be an empath, to feel other people's energies to keep you safe, but also how to be a doormat, how to walk on eggshells, and second guess how to make everyone happy so that you would stay safe emotionally and physically. Yep. So that's the third one. Some of us struggle with that more than others. I know for myself, 15 plus years ago, that was a major problem for me, major. And so I had to really work on it a lot. People who meet me now who say, oh, you have really good boundaries. I'm like, yeah, but if you had known me like 20 years ago, well, man, when I was in my 20s, major doormat, big time, and people pleaser. And even 10 years ago, I had some tendencies in my work in the spiritual community. I never wanted to speak up about anything that was controversial, or like I never took a stand on anything because I didn't want to make waves. I was afraid of making waves. I wanted everybody to be happy with me. I didn't want anyone to not like me. And so you may have noticed that I got over that because now I say things that people don't like all the time. Anyway, I got to read some of your comments. So go ahead and share any thoughts on being a doormat, being a people pleaser. And you can either give a thumbs up or a heart, or you can go ahead and share. Okay, let me see where we're at. And Anne says, oh, that's definitely me. Rochelle says, so is when you know people are bad-mouthing you, being hateful, even when you're not close by, you just know. Yeah, okay, so that's a really good point. So knowing when people are bad-mouthing you, saying bad things about you, talking about you behind your back, even when you're not close by, that is a skill that you have. That's a skill that I have too. And that is beneficial. It doesn't feel good, but that is a skill. The trip up part is when we feel that, and then we go into trying to fawn and please others in order to get them to like us, or not talk bad about us, or not be mad at us, or whatever. So when we get into the fawning thing, trying to smooth things over and walk on eggshells, that is the part that's problematic. So if you are able to tell if people are lying about you or gossiping about you behind your back, count that as a gift. Because then, in my opinion, when I can feel that now, I trust it. I used to not trust it. 15 years ago, when I would have that happen, I would approach the person and they would completely lie and gaslight me and tell me that I was crazy, that wasn't happening. And then later I found out that I was right. So that was a very compelling, important situation that happened to me, so that now I trust it. When I feel that, when I know that someone is talking about me behind my back, yeah, it hurts, but actually what I do with it now is I'm like, okay, now I know that that person can't be trusted. That is the kind of, it tells me about them. It tells me that's the kind of person that they are. And that person is not in my inner circle, because that's part of boundaries. We did boundaries yesterday, being really clear on what's allowed and what's not allowed. For me, anybody in my inner circle and even my middle circle of people, if they are gossiping about me, nope, they get pushed to the outer circle. I have a 0 tolerance rule for that. Y'all might have more. I have friends who have more flexibility on that than I do. But I think it's a gift to be able to tell and discern about people. But the trip up is when you try to people please as a result. I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks, Rochelle. Christy says, me too. Zahira says, I never took a stand on anything either and just went with the flow, even if it was a bad flow. Wow. I can relate. I totally used to do that. And Angela is giving us a thumbs up. She can relate to that too. Stephanie says, I think I am afraid to make waves. I don't speak up a lot about my thoughts. And girl, I totally get it. I understand. I feel like that one can be kind of a hard thing to break through. It just takes practice in like feeling the fear and doing it anyway, like feeling the fear and then speaking up anyway. And there were two things that were helpful to me. The first is something that you could practice. The second, maybe not so much. The first one, I had a spiritual coach several years ago who explained that, that sometimes we have to just make a choice, that the truth of what we're sharing, the truth of whatever it is that you're afraid to share, the truth of what you're sharing is more important than any discomfort or fear that you might be feeling. So the truth of what you're going to share is more important than any potential fear that you might have. And so after I heard that from this spiritual coach, I started practicing it because it was at a time when I was starting to speak up about predators in the spiritual community, especially sexual predators, like spiritual teachers who were having sex with like all their students and then gaslighting all of them and like manipulating and doing all this like truly horrible stuff. It wasn't a gray area. It was like totally overt predatory behaviors. And I started speaking up about that stuff. And it was really scary to take a stand on all of that. And there are people who like blocked me and won't talk to me anymore and who don't like me. But I had to decide that speaking up about it was more important than any discomfort that I might personally feel. So if that way of thinking is helpful to anybody to apply as you're struggling with speaking up about something, feel free to apply that. The other thing, though, that helped me break through my fear of speaking up, which you hopefully won't have to experience like I did, I went through a major, very scary and traumatic psychic attack experience back in 2016 when I worked with a spiritual teacher where I used to live who had some really nasty stuff attached to her. And it was like the most terrifying experience of my life. And it was PTSD inducing. It was really bad. And that's why I wrote my book that I mentioned earlier. And afterward, I felt really compelled to start speaking up about these kinds of things. And a lot of people didn't like it because they only wanted to focus on positive stuff. And I just felt so compelled to speak up about what happened to me and start stepping into this field of working in the field of psychic protection, that like any insecurity that I used to have was like burned in the fire. So I got over any of my other fears of people not being happy with me through that situation, through that PTSD inducing fiery situation. All of that was transmuted. So hopefully you won't have to go through that kind of thing, but you can just work on having awareness and understanding that your truth is more important, that speaking the truth is more important than any discomfort that you might be feeling. And I don't remember who this quote is from, and I'm just going to give you the gist because I can't remember the quote, but the gist is something about how if you're never upsetting anybody with the things that you say, then you're not saying anything important at all. And the idea is that if you are speaking up about things that are important, then there are going to be people who don't like you. That's just a fact. And so it's about stepping into your personal integrity and realizing that you need to hold firm to what you believe in. And if you don't, in order to people please, then you're out of integrity with yourself and with the world. So that's something to kind of ponder. It takes time. Okay, so that's number 3. And thanks for the heart, Victoria. And Joe says, yes, that whole approach, the person after that feeling and then the gaslight. Oh, yeah. Rochelle, gaslighting is the worst. My biggest pet peeve. Oh, yeah. So we as empaths have probably experienced a lot of gaslighting because we will feel things and know things. And when we speak about it, people will deny and gaslight. And then we will oftentimes doubt ourselves. Well, maybe I wasn't right. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm crazy, right? But most of the time, if not all of the time, you're actually right. So that is kind of a tool that others will use against empaths. Gaslighting. That's this negative thing that people will do. Anne says, does ask me anything because I won't try and answer. I might upset someone. Yeah, so sometimes you hold back on responding because you're afraid that it might upset someone. Barbara says, trust is everything to me. Yeah, my inner circle of people, I need to be able to trust them. Absolutely. And it's been interesting. I've moved to a new city a year and a half ago, and so I'm meeting new people and very consciously observing different things that people do. And I'm like, okay, this person is gossiping about so-and-so the second that they leave the room. And what that tells me is they're probably going to do that about me too. So, it's important to listen, to pay attention, and when people show you who they are, believe them. That one's by Maya Angelou. Lourdes says, I now believe people when they first show me who they really are. Yes, exactly, Lourdes. Anne says, never stand up for myself either. Same reason, but also the abuse gets worse. Yeah, so I think some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about might be helpful in a couple of minutes, and because we're going to talk about how there's certain kinds of people that boundaries don't work with, and that speaking up for yourself doesn't work. It backfires with these kinds of people. But with more healthy and grounded people, you should be able to speak up for yourself. Thanks, Barbara. Zahira says, wow, my screen keeps freezing up. Maybe you have a slow internet. Stephanie says, now I feel I have trouble deciding what I believe, because if I know what I believe and it's different than other people's beliefs, then maybe I feel I am wrong. Yeah, Stephanie, I'm so glad that you and I are working together, because what pops into my mind is the fact that ever since I went through that psychic attack in 2016 and I had a major spiritual awakening as a result, I have been seeing a lot of truths spiritually that a lot of other people are not seeing. And so that has taken a lot of self-trust, which I had already developed a lot of it, but that takes a lot of self-trust. And so I look forward to you and I continuing our relationship together, because I think maybe some of that will spread onto you, that self-trust. Because you're right, a lot of the things that you and I are tuned into are not what like the mainstream spiritual world is saying and seeing, right? So it can be a hard position to be in. Okay, number 4 trip up for empaths is codependency. That is a therapist word. You can look it up, codependency. I'm just going to give like a little nutshell definition for how it applies with what we're talking about. Codependency can be the tendency to feel this like very strong urge and need to fix and heal others. So this is what this would look like. Attracting lots of relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic relationships, where you see the potential in that person, even though they right now are a total mess. You see the potential and you want to heal them. You want to fix them. Okay? That's a really common issue with empaths, because we feel so deeply. We feel, a lot of empaths feel deep compassion for others. And so we have that trip up of getting into codependent relationships, and even outside of our primary relationships, even just other interactions, being codependent. About a year ago, I was at a spiritual event, and a colleague walked up to me and started sharing with me, and she was talking about this other person, and she said who was having a lot of problems, and she said to me, Maya, what do you think? Do you think I can save her? And I said, girl, that's everything you're saying is super codependent, and like you're trying to fix this person, you're trying to save her. She just needs to have her own journey, okay? But this person was just really set on trying to save. She had a lot of relationships with people that she was trying to save, and this was an example of where I did say what I really thought. I said it with kindness, but I did say what I really thought, and I didn't realize it until a week later that I was completely blocked on Facebook, and that person will never speak to me again. And I think sometimes when we're really entrenched in our codependent patterns, if someone points it out to us, it can be really upsetting, right? The only reason why I pointed it out to her was because that was the second time she asked me what I thought. I didn't just offer it. She asked me what I thought, point blank. And this was the second time, and so I was a little more direct the second time. And sometimes when people are so in that pattern, if someone points it out to them, it's like it's just really upsetting, and they don't want to hear it. But I notice that is a really common pattern among healers, spiritual healers, energy healers, empaths, this codependent need to fix and heal others and doing things for others that they should actually be doing for themselves. So go ahead and share and tell me if you can relate to that tendency. Have you had codependent relationships where you are taking responsibility for the other person's healing? And if so, go ahead and share a little bit about that. Let's see where we are. Anne says, oh yeah, that's hard not to do. Angela says, I have stopped doing that because it backfires. Yeah, it does backfire. And when I speak of codependency, like, I really get it. Big sigh. Back in my 20s and even in my 30s, I was really codependent. And it was because that was what I grew up. Like, I was taught how to be codependent. I was taught dysfunctional behaviors growing up in a really trauma-filled environment. And so I became a people pleaser. I became codependent, and part of it was because of the trauma. Part of it was because of the religion that I was raised in. I was raised Irish Roman Catholic, and there was all this belief that you were supposed to be saintly and you were supposed to like make yourself suffer for other people that made you a good person. At least that's how it was in my family. It's maybe not that way in the entire religion, but in my experience of it and the church that I was going to, I was deeply entrenched in codependency by the time I left home, and it was encouraged. And so I had several codependent relationships, romantic relationships. So I really get it. But it's interesting because now that I've healed that through awareness, I made mistakes along the way. Even when I thought that I was healed, it would be like, oops, I thought I was done with this. Look, I did it again. But somehow, like, being on the other side of it, I have this radar for it and I can see it, and I have zero interest in participating in it. So, okay, we've got some good comments here. And Barbara says, people tend to take advantage of you. Yeah. Christy, I was taught that too. Stephanie, I have had romantic relationships in the past where I thought they were doing their spiritual work and I wanted to help them, but they were not doing their work. Yep. Totally get it. Zahira says, yes, I've been in both types, where someone else was doing everything for me and also where I am taking care of someone else. Yeah. Joe says, arg, I'm so codependent. It's only been since my last horrific romantic relationship that I finally stopped. I swung to the opposite direction, isolated, so I couldn't do it again. Still not back to a happy resolution. Yeah, it takes time. And you know what else, Joe? The tricky part is that our society, so I talked about how in my scenario, I grew up with trauma and with a particular religion, but our society, Western society as a whole, strongly promotes codependency. Like every romantic movie and every love song out there is like totally codependent. Like, you complete me. Well, like, I hate that. Oh my God. So like every love song is talking about how I was nothing. I was so sad and depressed. I was no one. I had nothing. And then you came along and now my life is complete. That, people, is Codependent, totally codependent. So when you break out of that, and then you're still trying to go out into the dating world, and like a lot of what you're going to run into are people who are still codependent. Like every comedy sitcom about relationships, all of them are acting codependent too. And it's all like funny, like we're all laughing about it, but it's very deeply ingrained into our society. So that makes it tough for those of us who've healed it. But we can then work on attracting, those who are also healed. But the majority are not. That makes it a little tougher. Lourdes says, wanting to help others has always been a passion of mine. And by the way, you guys, just to be clear, helping others and having an altruistic heart is a positive. That's a good trait. It's when we go to the extreme, right? Anyway, Lourdes is saying, wanting to help others has always been a passion of mine. Now I'm beginning to be mindful of what is best for me. Let me see the rest. I can help if the person asks for help. Otherwise, I stay quiet no matter how hard it is. I think that's a good approach. Victoria says, definitely, especially when I was younger. Anne says, being locked up with COVID is keeping me from being so helpful. God only knows how I'm going to manage when I can actually be of some use to someone. Yeah, so, it's important to remember that as I talk about codependency, I'm not saying that the healthy version of that would be to never help anyone or to be selfish and like overly focused on yourself. But it's about what's driving the helpfulness. If it's coming from a place of needing, like, oh my God, I need to fix this person, that is codependency. If it's coming from an open heart and just wanting to help people, then that's a good thing. One thing to keep in mind is to ask yourself the question, is this something they should be doing for themselves? Because if we're doing something for someone that they should be doing for themselves, then what we're doing is we are enabling them in being an energy vampire. We are enabling them in not being responsible about their lives. So if we go and rescue someone every time they screw up, but they should be stepping up, then we're not helping them. We're actually harming them through our help. So that's a good question to ask is this something that they should be doing for themselves? And if the answer is yes, then you can feel good about just allowing them to do it for themselves. Yep. All right, drink time. We have two more. We have 5 and 6, and number 6 is the one I am the most excited to talk about. Okay. Number 5, trip up for empaths, is that empaths tend to attract energy vampires. Most people nowadays know what an energy vampire is, but if you don't, I'm going to explain it. An energy vampire is a person who sucks your energy, and they might do it knowingly, but most of the time they do it unknowingly. So it's that really needy friend, or that friend who calls you up and every time they just talk and talk and talk about themselves, and you never get a chance to talk about what's going on with you, and all they do is just suck your energy, and then at the end of the phone call you're exhausted and depressed. That would be an example of an energy vampire. And so that's through, that energy vampirism is happening through your actual interactions. But there are other energy vampires where they could just sit next to you on the bus, and on a subtle level, they are draining your energy. Again, most of the time, these are people who don't consciously realize that they're doing it, but occasionally there are people who are dark magicians, people who are dark shamans, people who are very adept at working with energy, and they are misusing their spiritual knowledge and power, and they are draining people. But whether it's done intentionally by someone like that, which is less common, but it happens more than you would think, or it's just your average everyday person who goes around draining everybody. That is a common issue that empaths have, is like they are like a magnet for energy vampires. Here's the tough love I have for you. But before I give you tough love, go ahead and say energy vampire, or yes, exclamation mark, if you feel like you attract or have attracted energy vampires. And go ahead and share a little bit about that. So my tough love for you is that it takes two to tango, my love. It takes two to tango. So energy vampires are attracted to you if you have poor personal and or energetic boundaries. Even if it's subconscious, even if they're not a conscious energy vampire, they are attracted to you like a moth is attracted to a flame. So 50% of that is on you. It's true. So you're going to have to work on managing your energy, building up your energy, having better boundaries, all the things that we've worked on so far already in this Facebook challenge. If you have been having problems with energy vampires, then you need to go back and work on those other classes, because just working on that is going to help you a lot with energy vampires. Okay? So, all right, let's see what comments we have. Hello, kitty child. Oh, yeah. So, Vashti, are you being an energy vampire right now? She looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? Zahira says, exactly, the phone energy vampire. Yeah, when I was just sharing that, I was remembering, I think you shared yesterday or the day before on here about a friend who does that to you. Stephanie says, my ex-boyfriend was an energy vampire. Oh, yeah. Angela says, yes. Joe says, yes, most definitely. Barbara says, my mom was. It's hard when it's a family member. Lourdes says, I'm a magnet for energy vampires. Yeah. It's definitely a process of moving them out. And you know what? Some of you won the homework free gift yesterday, and it was how to make energy clearing spray. And those of you who are in Spiritual Empowerment Academy, you have access to that tutorial. I'm going to spray you with this bottle if you don't stop meowing. She wants to go outside. She's not allowed to because she keeps running away. Naughty teenager. Those who are in Spiritual Empowerment Academy have the tutorial for how to create this. This helped me a lot when I was first beginning to address the issue of attracting energy vampires. You know, it's hard when you've got so many that you're attracting. And so I would spray that into my energy field a couple of times a day. And I did notice that right away I was less attractive to energy vampires. I had fewer of them. Hello, child. Spoiled. So that can help too. And if you have your own recipe for making energy clearing spray, or whatever kind of spray you want to buy, that helps as well. But I have a particular formula that I use, and it helps a lot, in addition to just working on your energy boundaries and your personal boundaries. Yep. Angela says, and trying to get away when you realize what's happening is tough. Yeah, because a lot of energy vampires don't necessarily respond to boundaries very well. And we're going to talk about some of those issues in the next number 6 trip up. So you just have to do what you can to reduce contact or to get away from them. Christy says, yep, I was attracted to the drama and helping. Zahira says, yes, I have several friends who talk constantly and never listen to me, or they interrupt me and won't let me talk. Actually, I've unfriended some of them. Yeah, Zahira, I can totally relate. I have a rule for my inner circle that, actually I give people a lot of grace, because there might be a day where I talk their ear off, but then the next time they should be allowed to do that to me. We can trade off. If I'm having a bad day and I need to talk, then they need to also be able to talk. Maybe it's not the same phone conversation. But I've encountered a couple people that I was developing friendships with here that, every time I would say anything, I could never get a word in edgewise, ever. One person I spent 6 hours with, and the entire time I don't think I got to say any. I would start to say something, and then it was interrupted, and then they would talk about themselves. that was a little over the top. So that was definitely energy vampire behavior. Yeah. And so then what do we do when that's happening? If it's with a friend, really, it's not, I guess there are two things. It depends on what you want from the relationship. You can set a boundary. You can say lovingly, I notice that this happens a lot. You can try to have a conversation with them about it. If it's not someone that you have a close relationship with, in this instance, it was someone that I was just getting to know, and I was I think I'm gonna just accept that this is their personality, this is who they are, and I don't think it's my job to try to change them. And so what I'm gonna do is just take this as information, and I can still love them, I can still care about them, but with that information, I now know that this is not someone who goes in my inner circle. They're somewhere further out in the middle circle or further out from that, right? So with that information, I can make that choice. Christy says, I had no idea this would cause me to be vulnerable to psychic attacks. Can you clarify what you mean? Because I don't yet know all of your story, Christy. So feel free to share in a nutshell. I think I'm kind of guessing, are you saying that being an empath and being sensitive is what made you vulnerable to psychic attacks? Because that can also be true. Anybody who's vulnerable and sensitive energetically, that can set you up to be more of a target to either energy vampires or psychic attack. That's for sure. Anne says, oh yeah, if they are needy and I am feeling useless, bam. Yeah, that's a tough one, girl. Victoria says, the ones that scare me are the dark shamans that do it intentionally. Yeah, and I'm just going to say that happens way more than people realize, and this is why it's so important to be super discerning who you work with, because there are way more dark shamans, and even people who say that they're angel healers who are doing really nefarious stuff. So unfortunately, it's not a safe world, and we have to be really careful. Victoria says, how does one recognize these people and protect themselves using shields? Yeah, so Victoria, you are in Spiritual Empowerment Academy. I want to remember to direct you exactly in the student archives. There are classes that I've taught that you have access to those replays where I teach you exact methods for how to discern if a spiritual teacher is safe, if a spiritual teaching is safe, even being able to discern about potential friends and love interests. There's a couple of different classes on that, on how to use your intuitive skills and your tools, your spiritual tools, for discerning if someone is safe or not. So I'm sure that I will remember, but if I don't, follow up and ask me about that. I will direct you to those classes, because that's more in depth. Like, just telling you to shield yourself, that's not going to be enough to protect if you're going out and working with different healers, because there are many that are very tricky. I'll just say that. Zahira says, oh, my brother-in-law is, and I'm exhausted being around him, an energy vampire. And Barbara says, kitty, kitty, kitty. Oh, she's being quiet now, thank goodness. And if I ever seem like I'm being mean to her, I spoil the heck out of that cat. But she has rules too. And it's just the two of us living here, and I feel so bad that she can't go outside. But there's predators, like there's like hawks and stuff, and she likes to run away. So I'll give her some hugs and kisses later. She gets so much love from me, it annoys her how much I hug and kiss her. Rochelle says, I had a friend who was a vampire. It took me a long time to figure out. Once I placed a shield around me, the first time I became under attack. She needed followers. Over time, I saw through it. I now distanced myself. After I walked away, I pointed a few things out and said, just watch. They did. In time, they had the strength to leave as well. Well, I'm glad you spoke up in that situation. Yeah, and Christy is talking about how, about lowering your vibration. Yeah, for sure. If you don't have good energy boundaries, totally different thing. If you don't have good energy boundaries and you encounter an energy vampire, yeah, they will totally lower your vibration. Getting all tripped up on my words. Zahira says, thank you, Maya, about reminding me about the inner and outer circle. Yeah, I used to have tons of energy vampires. I used to have tons of people that were not very nice. I used to have a lot of saboteurs, people who would sabotage all of my efforts and just do all sorts of bad things. And when I was younger, I thought that was how everyone was, because I was raised in that environment. So I had to start weeding those people out. And then now, in my late 40s, I have this visual image that I use where we have our inner circle. That's our inner sanctum. These are the people that you could trust implicitly. And there might not be very many people in that inner circle, or maybe none at all yet, but you can work on that. And then you have your middle circle. Those are people that you get along with. You might have fun with them, but and there's maybe certain things you get from your relationship with them, but you don't trust them to the level of your inner sanctum. And then there's the outer circle, all your acquaintances, and then there's the people that you block who are abusive. You don't want them in your circles at all. Oh, Victoria's question. Can somebody take your energy long distance? Can somebody take your energy long distance? Victoria, absolutely. Yes, 100%. That happens all the time. People who are unaware energy vampires, as well as dark shamans. And I've worked with a lot of clients over the years who they've had dark shamans, dark healers, etc., who have been attacking them long distance. And that's super common. So absolutely, yes. Zahira says, I won't work with others except for you, so I know I will be safe. Oh, that's very sweet, Zahira. I'm totally cool with people working with others, but there are a ton of predators out there, and that's just a fact. So let's dive into the final one on our list. The number 6 empath trip up is the empath narcissist pairing. The empath and narcissist pairing. And I'm going to go into some definitions. So if you haven't been taking notes, but you've had narcissist issues, you better grab a pen and paper because I'm going to define some things. First, I want to answer Victoria's question. How does one protect themselves more against distance energy vampires? So I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. So I feel like the issue that you're having, Victoria, is more than a mild issue. So it to fully address it would be beyond the scope of some of the basic techniques that we're doing here. But luckily, you're already in Spiritual Empowerment Academy, so you're going to get a lot of help in there. But let me give like a basic tip. Okay, so the basic answer for those who are not in the academy would be that in order to protect yourself from mild to severe stuff, doesn't matter what it is, you've got to work on all your fundamentals first and foremost. Because there's not like a special prayer or a special visualization or a special angel that you can call on that magically like makes you impervious. So I'm just saying that to everybody because I know everybody wants the magic pill, but you've got to work on all of the things that we've worked on so far in this challenge. So energy boundaries, personal boundaries, learning to discern what's going on in your energy, and so much more. And also having a daily spiritual practice where you're connecting with yourself, you're managing your energy, connecting with any guides or angels that you're working with, developing relationships with them. All of that is considered foundational. And if you don't have the foundation, then it's really hard to address a more advanced issue, right? So for everybody listening to this, you've got to work on the foundations. And I've been kind of like badgering my academy students about that last night in our Facebook Live. I was badgering them about that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, Victoria, is that I'm going to brainstorm a couple of different areas that I'll have you work on in the archives, okay? And let's be in touch on a weekly basis through the Academy. And as to what you're working on, what you've completed, because I know this is an ongoing issue with you. And so basically I'm your personal coach, just helping you through the program. And you can also schedule a one-on-one with me if you need to, okay? Yeah, and I know you want me to give you, I think, maybe a magic pill, like say this one prayer, but yeah, you gotta master all the fundamentals and have a daily practice of managing your energy. And you guys, if you have a daily practice where you are managing your energy, where you're doing what we did on day 2, where you're checking in on your energy and clearing out anything, as well as the guided journey that I'm going to take you through tomorrow, where I teach you how to set up your grid of protection around your aura, how to strengthen your aura. All of that foundational stuff makes you less and less and less vulnerable to any kind of energy vampires, including the dark shaman type. So you can't go wrong with doing all of your foundational stuff. And then you'll be able to clear it more easily if you do have an issue with somebody. Okay, so Victoria, you follow up with me and we'll see what you're working on right now, and I'll take you on to the next step, okay? Rochelle says, I really don't trust when I see posts asking you to share a selfie, especially on spiritual groups. I'm always concerned people who have the skills can steal my energy. You know, that's a good point. I've even thought about not having my picture, to not having a current picture on my Facebook profile. I've heard people talk about only putting up older pictures. It's a choice that I make that I don't, I just post whatever pictures I want to on my own Facebook feed because I know that I have enough spiritual strength and developed skills and different methods that I use on a daily and weekly and monthly basis to clear out any of that junk. So I'm not an accessible target for that. So keep that in mind, you guys. You don't have to be afraid to like have your picture somewhere online. But I agree with you, Rochelle, that if it's some Facebook group that doesn't really have great energy anyway, then so I suppose it depends on the group. Because I know Stephanie, who I think is on here live today, she has a Facebook group that's really small. Every once in a while, she'll ask people to post a selfie of themselves, and the focus of the group is one of the focuses is on learning to love yourself, and so that's the emphasis of posting your picture. And I would feel totally safe anytime posting a selfie in her group. So, you know, develop your discernment, like we talked about in day 2 of our journey. And follow your inner guidance. If you don't want to post a selfie, then don't. No one's making you do it. Yeah? Joe says, empath, narcissist, my particular poison. Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie is still here. Okay, we're going to talk about, this is going to be a long class today because we're at an hour and a half right now. All right, narcissist. So there is a particular matchup that happens vibrationally, energetically, between the empath and the narcissist. Sometimes also the sociopath, psychopath, BPD, other kinds of psychological disorders. Remember the disclaimer that I said before, I'm not a therapist, and please don't ask me to diagnose you or any of your loved ones, because I can't do that. But I am going to give some basic definitions of the narcissist. And again, our focus here is on just gaining awareness, so you can become more aware of maybe some interactions that you've had with people that you did not realize that you were dealing with a narcissist, perhaps. But all you knew was that it was a very stressful situation that was very confusing, perhaps. So as an empath, because opposites often attract, there's this like 2 puzzle pieces fitting together. The empath, who is like very sensitive and compassionate and caring, matches up with the narcissist, who actually is, in my opinion, a type of energy vampire, because they are feeding off of your energy and they are using particular behaviors to manipulate you so that they can feed off of your energy through creating conflict and through creating power struggles. So there are 2 types of narcissists, and for the longest time, I actually, when I would hear people talking about narcissism, I wasn't really attracted to that subject because I personally didn't have a history with classic narcissists. But then I discovered that there's a second kind of narcissist, and I realized that was the kind that I grew up with. My mother and other relationships that I had and other interactions were with covert narcissists. So I'm going to explain the difference between the two. A classic narcissist might be the kind that you've already heard about. This is someone who's like an egomaniac, who's like thinking that they're the most amazing person in the world, and they are a bully. They will yell and scream at people. They're super controlling. They're super abusive, and it's like over the top. They think, or they act like they're the most amazing person in the world. But deep down, the reason why they're acting that way is because they're actually, in reality, they're extremely insecure. They have a terrible self-image, which is why they're acting the way that they are. That doesn't make it okay, but that's why. That's a classic narcissist. A covert narcissist, as some people say, this is really the worst kind because it's much more tricky and difficult to pinpoint at the beginning of a relationship. A covert narcissist can present as humble, compassionate, vulnerable, and even shy. And they will often have a story about how horrible their life was, but it's manipulation. It's so that you'll feel sorry for them and you'll get hooked in. Okay? A common theme, though, between the two types, classic and covert, is self-absorption, passive aggressiveness, extremely sensitive to criticism, and extremely sensitive to if you set a boundary with them, that they don't handle boundaries well at all. Now, there are some common patterns that both classic and covert narcissists will use. The first one is that at the beginning of the relationship, and I want to point out, this can be a romantic relationship, it can be a work relationship, it can be a colleague, it can be a client, it can be a coworker, I already said that, it could be a parent, it can be anybody. So one of their patterns is that when you are first encountering them, so at the beginning of the relationship, whatever kind of relationship it is, there's tons of love bombing. They are telling you, they're just like gushing and gushing about how amazing you are, whatever that looks like. So it's like, you're so beautiful, you're so handsome, you're so brilliant, you're a genius, you're the most amazing whatever that I've ever met. Love bombing is it's so common that there's a term for it, and it's called love bombing. But that is just a manipulation, because later they will show their true colors. Another thing that's common with classic and covert narcissists is gaslighting. And so if you ever step out of line where you give them a constructive criticism or you set a healthy boundary with them, they are not going to like that at all. So if you've stepped out of line, then what they will do is attack. They might gaslight you, and the gaslighting will be like they'll insist that you've said things that you didn't say, and they will tell you that you're crazy and that it didn't happen like you say that it happened, or that you're too sensitive. You're just too sensitive. All of that is gaslighting. Another method that they will use is called word salad, which is where they will just say a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't even make sense. And I so much can't do word salad that I can't even imitate it. So you'll just have to look it up if you want to get an example of it. But they'll just like talk in circles. as a means of arguing, and the idea is to just confuse you so that you forget what your point was in the first place. I've heard in a couple of different places from therapy teachers. They've said that one test of a narcissist, either classic or covert, and by the way, a classic narcissist is pretty obvious, like they are over the top. So mainly this test would be for a covert narcissist. If you're thinking, they did the love bombing, something doesn't seem right, and I'm wondering if this person is a covert narcissist, then try setting a healthy boundary with them. Okay? If you set a healthy boundary, like we talked about yesterday, and they completely lose their shit, and they freak out, that is a pretty clear sign that you're dealing with a covert narcissist. Now, again, you're not a therapist, so you can't go around diagnosing everybody, but it's definitely an indicator. Because if you set a healthy, reasonable boundary, like we talked about yesterday, a normal, healthy, emotionally healthy person is going to respect that boundary. Now, if they're sensitive, they might get their feelings hurt, like an empath might have that happen. But they're not going to come unhinged and attack you verbally or physically, or start to call you names, or start to gaslight you and insist that you're saying things that you didn't say. Like, if they completely come unhinged and they're like, because you set this one little healthy boundary, they say, I'm never talking to you ever again. Okay, that is not healthy. That is a sign of narcissistic tendencies, whether classic or covert. This was something that I had to work through for many years, because as an empath, I used to attract a lot of people who were covert narcissists. And where when I would set a boundary with them, I would say, excuse me, I need for you to do blah, blah, blah. Like just a normal boundary, not like a horrible thing that I was asking them to do, right? So I would just say something normal, and oh my God, it was like the fires of hell would get unleashed upon me. And I had this issue for so many years. Various different people, different kinds of relationships, even complete strangers, and I finally had the epiphany that, like, oh, the people that this happens with are, like, these are covert narcissists. This is because that's not a normal response to a boundary, okay? Now, as an empath, it is not your duty to heal that person, okay? They are on their journey. The issue of narcissism, classic or covert narcissism, those are very difficult things to heal, even with going to therapy, okay? And a common tactic of both kinds of narcissists is that when they think that you are pulling out of the relationship, they will do a manipulation tactic where they suddenly have seen the light and they say that they're going to heal, they're going to go to therapy, or they're going to be nice from now on, they're going to stop doing that bad thing or whatever. And so then they start to love bomb you. They're on their best behavior. But don't trust it, because as soon as you set a boundary or step out of what they expect you to do, because this is all about them manipulating you. As soon as you step out of their expected behavior, they will be back into the gaslighting, word salad, verbal abuse, trying to attack you, telling you, how horrible you are, and they're never talking to you ever again. Okay? So, as an empath, you have a huge heart. So you're like, oh, well, they are being nicer now. Well, that's a trick. That's totally common narcissist approach. So don't be fooled by that. They need to get help from a therapist. Now, if this is someone that you don't have a choice, it's like your coworker who sits in the cubicle right next to you, and you can't get away from them. You're going to just have to do your best to reduce contact, and really the less you say. So one of the approaches is the less you say, the better, because what they're trying to do, the big thing that they are trying to do is to induce conversation. They are trying to induce an argument. They will try so hard to say something that will trigger you. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to hook you back in. And as long as you're arguing with them, they know that they've got you hooked. Okay? So you have to just not engage. And some people call this the gray rock method, because you're just like, you just answer their question, and you don't argue, you don't try to defend yourself. And you can even go on YouTube if you're having issues with this. Look up gray rock technique for narcissists, because this is one method. It doesn't completely fix the issue, but basically it will help you feel a little better. It'll just make you feel a little less crazy, because the narcissist is going to make you feel completely crazy, because they will induce an argument, and then they will gaslight you, and it will make you feel like you are a crazy person. Okay. So there's tons of free videos on YouTube that you can look up if you've had issues with classic narcissists or covert narcissists. And you can go down that rabbit hole and learn more about it, because the more you understand about the kinds of behaviors, then that helps you to anchor into your own being. And you can go, oh, I see what this other person is doing. Because when you don't understand those behaviors, it's much easier for them to hook you in and get you triggered. But when you see it, when you see the truth, when you see what they're trying to do, and you know the tricks, then even though it might be a little bit stressful, then you can still maintain your center better. So there's a lot of books out there. There's free YouTube videos. There's a lot of resources out there. And if you are someone who works with a therapist and you feel like you've had issues with this, that would be a great approach, to talk with your therapist about issues that you've had with narcissists. Okay, we've got some good comments, I think. Let's see what we got. Okay. Rochelle says, per my recent comment, sounds good. I agree. It depends on the energy of the group. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. And, overall, just those random groups that are out there, I wouldn't share your personal stuff in there, because, yeah, it's a whole mix of different people. But if it's a very safe space and the administrators are taking good care of the energy, then you might consider it. Barbara says, word salad is a new term. Yes, word salad. I was talking about some of the predatory spiritual teachers. One method that they will use, and some of them are covert narcissists, one of the things that they will use a lot is word salad, like giving all this like spiritual gobbledygook. One of my clients in the past, she sent me an email that this very predatory spiritual teacher had sent to her. She sent me this email, and I looked at it and I said, it's complete word salad. It was all this like spiritual gobbledygook. Like this lady, this predator wasn't saying anything. It was just a bunch of flowery stuff to make it sound like she was saying something. And then meanwhile, she was doing horrible predatory stuff and attacking her long distance, like we were talking about a few minutes ago. But it sure makes them look important when they do the word salad thing. Anne is saying, this is bad enough for everyone, so much worse if they are doing it to a person with brain injuries. Oh, yes, definitely, Anne. Because then, they're trying to create confusion. And then if someone has cognitive issues, then that makes it even worse. And Anne says, you doubt yourself to begin with, even before they start flipping out. Yeah, and when it comes to family members, if that's who you're talking about, the only thing that you can do is just like reduce contact and be very intentional about any contact that you have with that person so that you can preserve your own well-being. Angela says, I tend to lose it when they do word salad, but then they lose it when I go right back to my original point, etc. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the classic and covert narcissist will, typically they will hate it if you stay really focused on your point, because what they're trying to do is, and this term is used a lot, induce an argument. Induced argument. They are trying to induce an argument. They're trying to get you off center. And when you stay calm and you're like staying on your point, oh, that pisses them off so bad. So bad. Joe says, I used to watch my father do that switcheroo and love bombing to my mother for the first 20 years of my life. Yeah. And Barbara says, abuse cycle. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that term because abusive relationships do go in that cycle where like there's the abuse and then the person says that they're going to leave. I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave if you keep doing this. And then they're nice. Oh, I'm going to be all better. I'm going to give you flowers, or I'm going to be like super nice and say nice things to you. And then as soon as you both relax a little bit, they're back to the abuse. Zahira says, I'm learning that I've had those relationships and it's very frustrating. Yep, it is, but now you know more. Joe says, induced argument. They get off on sucking your energy. Yeah, so like I said, I consider a narcissist to be a type of spiritual vampire, because what they're trying to do is do this dance with you so that they can feed off of your energy, and they will get off on triggering you. Like, you might even notice if you've had an encounter with someone that, like, if they end up triggering you, you'll see this little micro expression, just a little bit of smile, or maybe they'll go into a full out smile. Like, they love it. It just feeds their energy. Rochelle says, I had a family member who said things to me and my daughter, including making fun of my son dying and laughing afterwards. That sounds psychopathic to me. That's horrible. When I told someone, they just say, she was good at covering her track. I lost my track. Hang on a second. Let's just say, oh shoot. It's it's harder when it's a really long comment, but this is really important. Okay, I think I can see it all now. When I told someone, ... let's just say she was good at covering her track, or saying how she's just a brash person. Oh, I'm just a brash person. So, yep, that's gaslighting. Like, oh, you're just so sensitive. Or, oh, this is just how I am. I'm just an honest person. I'm just a brash person. That's just me. Of course, people took her side. Over time, I quit reacting, and people began seeing she was the problem, not me. She could not handle us ignoring her, and we completely wiped our hands of her. People finally saw her true colors. Yep. It's unfortunate, but I was just listening to another video this morning about narcissism, and the therapist was saying that a lot of times people like that will burn through lots of relationships, lots of jobs, because they can't maintain, because eventually the person or people will step away, like you guys did, and then they have to start all over with somebody new. Occasionally they will end up with a partner that stays with them, somebody who is very codependent, and then they will stick with that person, but usually people will leave, so they burn through a lot of relationships. Okay, so those were the 6 trip-ups of the empath. Number 1 was having trouble absorbing stuff from others. Number 2, mirroring other people's behaviors. Number 3, being a people pleaser, walking on eggshells, being a doormat. Number 4, codependency. Number 5, attracting energy vampires. And number 6, the empath narcissist match. That's obviously not very healthy. So the key is, the more that you work on your foundations, the more that you work on your managing your energy, becoming more aware of what's going on in your energy, learning how to set energy boundaries, learning how to set personal boundaries, and just practicing. It takes practice every single day, right? So those are the keys. We went really long today, but I always follow through on my word, and I'm going to do a really quick reading for somebody because I said I would pull a card. So if you would like to have a free 1-card reading, say me! Exclamation mark. If you would like to get a reading, I'm going to pick one person. Say me. And while I am waiting for that, I'm going to give you a couple of tips. How to thrive, even though you might have some of these issues, some of these trip-ups. Going to therapy is really helpful. I talked about all the free videos on YouTube, journaling, being honest, doing honest self-evaluation, forgiving yourself, having compassion with yourself. Don't expect to change in just one day. It takes time. And sometimes you have to practice, like you up level a little bit. You start to attract people who are a little bit better, but then there's still some issues. You've got to release some people, up level again. And so you don't always get it all perfect, where you release somebody and then the next person is perfect. If we're talking about romantic relationships, sometimes you have to just keep up leveling and keep working on yourself. Also, there's a book called Codependent No More. If you have issues with codependency, it's an old book by Melody Beatty, but if you just look up Codependent No More on Amazon, you'll find it. It's a very well-known book. Okay, let's see who's getting their gift. I want to see who's already won. I want to see if there's anyone who hasn't. Okay, our winner today is Joe. Yay, Joe! I'm going to write you down. Day 3. Joe. Okay, so I'm going to pull a card. This is a mini reading. Very quickie message. This is for Joe, but we also set the intention that this will apply to other people in the group as well. This is a suggestion for you, Joe, for how you can approach working on healing some of these issues that we've talked about. So, okay. It's funny because sometimes when we get an intuitive message, it's basically like reaffirming what we've already said. So that's what's happening here. And this is definitely true for you. We have the spirit for you, Joe. You, I'm talking to you. And everybody. We got the spiritual strength card. This is reiterating what we already said, which is you've got to work on your daily foundation, your weekly clearing, your daily clearing, your things that you're doing multiple times a day to clear and activate your energy. And then look at what's happening. Like this person is in meditation, and then what's happening is that it's actually making their energy larger than life, and they can even hold up a steel beam or whatever that is. So everybody keep working on your fundamentals, keep working on all the foundations, and I think that's the message. Foundations, daily practice. See if there's anything else. Yeah, the other message is to remind you, Joe, and everybody about your own spiritual strength, that as human beings we're often taught that we are this size, but actually, spiritually speaking, you're way stronger than you realize. And we talked about this, I think yesterday or the day before, that all the negative spiritual beings out there and negative people out there would like for you to believe that you are not very strong and that they are more powerful than you are. And that is a mind game that they are playing. Whether it's the narcissist that's trying to do that to you, or the negative entity, the dark forces, whatever, the terrible boss who's super controlling, whatever, they would all like for you to believe that you only have this much power, but you have, by default, and I'm not just saying this, literally you have way more power than you realize. And the mind game that's played is making you believe that you have less power. And this has been something that all of us collectively have been brainstormed to take on this belief our entire lives. Like our entire culture has been, I think I said brainstormed. I'm getting tired. Brainwashed. Sometimes I switch my words. You guys can all laugh. You guys can all laugh at me. I crack myself up. We've all been brainwashed since the beginning to believe that we are not powerful, that other beings, that other structures of society, etc., are all more powerful than we are. But this is actually the truth. So not only are you going to do your daily practices to build up your foundations, but you're also going to work on really like mentally wrapping your brain around the fact that you are more powerful than you realize. Because I can tell you this, but it takes a while for your brain to really get it and for you to know it in your bones, right? So those are some things for you to work on, Joe, and everybody. We are all done for today. Everybody's saying thank you, and thanks to everybody who stayed till the end. I appreciate each one of you. Joe says, I love that book. Very first self-help book I ever read. Yeah, great book. I read it back in my 20s. Barbara says, After all the shit I have gone through, I think I have a pretty good handle on all this stuff. I've learned to be more of a stern person. Good for you, Barbara. I'm glad. You're welcome, everybody. We have one more day of this challenge, and also check into the Facebook group because there's a homework post in there for day 4. And I'm going to be picking 3 winners from day 4 homework to receive the chakra balancing guided meditation audio. And that is a really, really good guided meditation. Tomorrow we're going to be wrapping things up, and I'm going to walk you through the steps that I use for balancing and clearing and protecting my energy every single day. Who is saying? Victoria says, I read it in my 20s too. Joe says, thanks to everyone, and to you, Maya. Have a great night. All right. Thanks, everybody. You have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Lots of love.